Welcome back, football fanatics, to the First and 10 Club. And I'm your host, Mark D, and it's Christmas Eve, and things should be happy and festive. But I'm still reeling from last week. Everything was hot garbage. I got knocked out of all my leagues. I lost money. My predictions were wrong. My picks were wrong. I'm sorry. That's all I can do is ask for some Christmas forgiveness and say I'm sorry. It happens. It doesn't matter, how much research you do. Every now and again, you have a week where it just bites you. And unfortunately, 4 leagues, 4 early exits, 4 leagues where I'm playing for third place. If you ain't first, you're last. So what happened? What happened in week 15? Well, starters, the Bills. The Bills continue to roll. The Bills put a whooping on, and on Saturday, and well, let's be honest. If you saw all my leagues that I was in, that is largely what doomed me in Week 15. I faced Josh Allen, I faced Diggs, I faced Beasley, I faced Knox, and I just couldn't overcome it. I really couldn't. One of my leagues, I played some wrong. I didn't start the right people, made some wrong choices in my plays, and I could have won. Luckily, the other three, the better team just won. I always say it takes 3 things in fantasy to be successful. One is you have to draft a good team. You have to know what you're doing when you draft. You have to be prepared for your draft. 2, you need to manage your team throughout the year. But then 3, which might be the most important, is you just need some luck. Luck wasn't in my favor this year. No championships this year. It's kind of bummed about that. But that's 2020 in a nutshell. So other things from week 15. Well, the 49ers lost another quarterback. And Dallas unleashed Tony Pollard. Ezekiel Elliott was benched because of injury. But now I have to ask myself the question, looking at that game, and I mentioned this in an earlier episode. Did Ezekiel Elliott hold back the Cowboys? Pollard looks electric. He seems to have a little bit more passion, at least this year, a little bit more spark when running the football, a little bit more of a all-around weapon coming out of the backfield. And that's not saying Zeke can't catch the ball out of the backfield. He can. But Pollard looked to be, I don't know, maybe a little bit fresher, like he wants it more. We talk about sometimes once somebody gets paid, they lose that luster. Well, I have to wonder. Actually, I don't even wonder. I actually would go on record with this. For as bad as the NFC East has been this year, I truly believe that if Elliott might have been benched or given a lesser role at the beginning of the year, the way Tony Pollard has played in short bursts and in limited workloads, and now last week, that might have been that extra thing they needed to at least win the NFC East. But it happens. I think there's a very, very strong chance that Ezekiel Elliott might get moved in the offseason. Because honestly, you have a cheaper version, and right now looking to be a better version in Tony Pollard. So I don't know if Zeke's back this week, but if he isn't, and if I'm the Cowboys right now, I don't know that I'm rushing him back. Tony Pollard might grab hold of this job and not let go of it. So, talking about running backs, let's get into the Titans game. The Titans have another impressive win, and it's with it wasn't on the back of the King this week. It wasn't Henry that absolutely dominated, and it was a smash spot. It really was. But the good thing is the Tennessee Titans are really proving just how dangerous they are. If it doesn't have to be 200 yards and 2 touchdowns every week from Henry, and Tannehill can throw the ball like he did this past week, now I bet against a very, very weak team. But still, this is the Titans that made a very deep run last year, and I really believe have the potential to do it again this year, especially if they can get the defense clicking. Talking about another dangerous team, one that's fighting for the playoffs right now, the Miami Dolphins. Tua pulls off a rare feat, beating a Patriot-led team by Bill Belichick. Rookie quarterbacks have a horrendous track record against Bill Belichick, especially the first time they face him. Didn't seem to be a problem. And on top of that, the Patriots were yet stymied again by a Miami defense that just keeps forcing turnovers. The Miami Dolphins, behind a hodgepodge, throw it together, no-name running back group, short of Devontae Parker, who's kind of been in and out of the lineup, are finding ways to win. You talk about rebuilds and turnaround. Last year, there was this whole conversation about tanking for Tua. Well, they didn't even tank. They still get Tua. And talk about just an immediate turnaround. So the sky is looking awfully rosy. The Miami Dolphins were definitely on Santa's nice list this year, as it looks like they're on the verge of a playoff berth. The Ravens, who are also fighting for a playoff berth, are getting to that point where they're just finding a will to win. And I don't know, maybe it'll be a little too late. Who knows? But they have no backup behind Lamar Jackson right now. They have to be terrified. They're down to their fourth string quarterback backing up Lamar Jackson, but yet he's using his legs again. He's finding ways to get the ball downfield and move the ball, and they're successfully starting to put together some wins. So even though it's an uphill battle, they're looking like they're going to make a run at a playoff spot here. So the AFC playoffs are going to be very interesting right up to the end. Talking about, moving from the AFC now to the NFC, teams that are vying for playoffs. Well, this past week you had the Arizona Cardinals, who are in a fight for the playoffs. And believe it or not, so are the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, the NFC East is that bad. And they need some things to go their way. But before we get into all that, let's just talk about a fantastic quarterback battle that you saw. You got to see two young, bright quarterbacks in the league. One in Kyler Murray, who has had weeks where he looks like an absolute MVP candidate. Other weeks where maybe not so much. And he got to face the new phenom in Philadelphia, the new Wentz breaker. First was Foles, now it's Jalen Hurts. And although the Eagles didn't come away with the win, and look, it's nothing against Eagles fans. I just don't think this is the year that Philadelphia puts it together and, makes that late rush. I just don't see that happening because they still have a lot of holes, and definitely on the defensive side. Their defense has just become very, very weak. They have injuries. What used to be a strength was Philly's D just really hasn't been producing like it has in the past. It wouldn't surprise me to see Schwartz gone after this year or some changes. There's going to be coaching changes in Philadelphia. Now, whether we talked about this in previous shows, whether it's Peterson, whether it's coordinators, who knows? But there's definitely going to be changes there. The good news is, though, it really does seem like Philadelphia may have found their franchise quarterback. And the crazy thing about it is, well, everyone thought that was Wentz, and this happens in the NFL. So now you have just a ridiculously high-paid backup. And the funny thing about that is Wentz pretty much said, well, I don't want that. I don't want to be here if I'm going to be a backup. Well, the problem with that, Wentz, is the contract you signed, Philly can't cut it. They would take a bloodbath and salary cap damage. And I don't necessarily know that a team is going to be willing to trade for him. Now, maybe on the cheap, but there's a very big contract number there. Wentz has proven to kind of have some issues staying healthy and just has not looked great this year. So that's going to be a very interesting dynamic in the offseason. And when we get to our offseason show or our season ending show and we talk about the storylines to come, uh, that's going to definitely be one of our main topics of conversation because there's going to be a lot of moving parts this year in the NFL. In the offseason, lots of people could find new homes. It'll be great. But I'm getting off topic. So the Eagles lose that one. The Cards pull out the win. They stay right in the thick of things for a playoff spot. And talking about playoff spot, fighting for playoff spots, well, you have old school, going throwback, uh, the Washington football team. Now, we're going to talk about the Washington football team a little bit later for a completely different reason. A little foreshadowing. But let's talk about Washington's defense. If Washington is going to end up winning this division, it's going to be on the strength of their defense. Well, they've had some very tough games this past couple weeks. Now, they beat the Steelers. They beat the 49ers. The interesting thing was they faced Seattle. Now, this was a winnable game. This was a winnable game right up until the end. But honestly, I'm going to call out the defense. The defense let us down. And that's unfortunate because if we're going to get anywhere, it's going to be on the strength of the defense. The offense is just not completely there yet. Terry McLaurin cannot do everything on his own. We don't have complementary weapons to help get him open. The next best offensive weapon we have, Antonio Gibson, is out with it. Turf toe. Who knows if we get him back? And then on top of it, we didn't have our starting quarterback in Alex Smith. We went back to our second-year guy in Dwayne Haskins, who, okay, he didn't cost us the game, in my opinion, but he did not look like a first-round quarterback. Not one that you want. So, look, he played 1 year in college as a starter. He still hasn't had a full year in the NFL. So the fact of the matter is there is a very high ceiling for him. There's a lot of great raw tools there, but now you have to ask the question of does he have the makeup to be able to develop and maybe have an NFL career without that instant success. Saints in Kansas City. Talking about other playoff matchups and whatnot. Well, this isn't necessarily one that affects playoffs. I mean, it does. But you had the Saints versus Kansas City. Drew Brees is back, and man, did he not look right. He is not 100%. Missing throws, short throw, it just did not look right. However, he fought, came on there at the end, started to get clicking a little bit, knocked the rust off a little bit. And I think, in all honesty, I'm not saying this was going to happen, but I think you could have potentially seen a Super Bowl preview here. And would that be a bad thing? I mean, let's face it, Kansas City is the most exciting team right now in the AFC in terms of what they can do on offense, and it's fun. It's fun to watch, even if you're not a Kansas City fan, even if you're not a Patrick Mahomes fan, sorry. Even if you're not a fan of those teams, it's fun to watch, and that's what the NFL needs. And that game was fun to watch. There's struggle back and forth, like that's great football. That's great NFL football. So, yeah, that's what happened there. The Saints came out on the short end of the stick this time around. They couldn't pull it off. But that's one of those great things that gives you a little prelude that if that does happen to be the Super Bowl, well, there's your talking point. Do the Saints pull it out this time? Can they figure out how to beat Mahomes in round 2? And then my favorite points from Week 15. Sean McVay. Shame on you. Shame, 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 shame. The LA Rams lose to the New York Jets. Pop the champagne, it's a holiday party. Is it? How can you have a game where you have one team win, one team lose, and both teams' fan bases are devastated because of it? If that's not 2020, I don't know what is. So one, the Rams, who for a hot second were looking like a powerhouse, coming out of nowhere to be maybe a contender for one of the favorites to get out of the NFC, look past the hapless New York Jets because they have a big game this week coming up versus Seattle. And oh, yeah, what did you do? You forgot to win week 15 against the New York Jets. The now 1 and 15, 14, 1 and 14, 1 and 14 New York Jets. You gave a winless team their first win. You're not even a bad team. Like, that's not supposed to happen. You let Adam Gase coach you. Sean McVay, Wonderkin, Whizkid. What the hell happened? So, hurrah, everything's great, right? Because the Jets, they end up not being winless. There's still only 2 teams to ever do that. The Cleveland Browns and the Detroit Lions. Jets, that's good. We're on, or is it? Because in the process of doing this, right now, the way it stands, you just cost yourself Trevor Lawrence, who pretty much is consensus, hands down, the number 1 pick overall, the next best quarterback to come to this league since probably Peyton Manning, with a decorated high school and college career, all the tools. You cost yourself that. Can there be anything more Jet than that? Sure, the city of Jacksonville and the Jacksonville Jaguars organization are ecstatic right now because, well, thanks to the New York Jets and Adam Gase, well, you just solved their quarterback problem. So, can't get any worse than that, right? And then come along the Pittsburgh Steelers and they say, hold our beer. Monday Night Football. Losers of 2 straight. 2 playoff teams. You know, Washington, who kind of can put some things together. The Bills, who look like a powerhouse. They're going to get things right. They're going to get things fixed. They play the Cincinnati Bengals with a 3rd-string quarterback on Monday Night Football. And they just crap the bed. Man, Cincinnati just wanted that game more. That's the team that came to play. That's the team that came prepared. You would have never guessed the way Pittsburgh played that they were at one point the last undefeated team in the league, currently on a 2-game losing streak, now 3-game, 1-2-3, 3-game losing streak, because Cincinnati punched them in the mouth, they never let up, and man, did they look dominant. Pittsburgh still can't run the ball. Pittsburgh's wide receivers can't catch the ball. And I'll tell you right now, and please, I know I have Pittsburgh fans that watch this. Please come at me, but I'll tell you right now, if it wouldn't be for the fact that Big Ben is an institution in Pittsburgh, the championships that he won, the fact that he is so tenured there, if it wouldn't be for that, his ass be on the bench because he's playing like crap right now. I don't know if he's not healthy. I don't know if he's not. And Big Ben comes out and says, oh, I'll be back for 2021. I'll tell you that right now. If I'm Pittsburgh, I don't know that I want him back. You have you had, now they've had a lot of injuries on that side, but you had a dominant defense. You have some amazing weapons on that team. And it's just not, it's just not there. Don't get me wrong, it's not all Ben's fault. But I don't know that Ben's going to be the guy to lead the Pittsburgh Steelers to the promised land again. So the question is, do you move on maybe a year too early? Or do you just, as a courtesy, let Ben keep playing quarterback until it's so bad or until he decides he doesn't want to play anymore? It's an interesting dilemma for Pittsburgh. It really is. And I don't really know what they're going to do there. So that brings us into week 16. It's championship week for fantasy. And it's an interesting week. It really is. Um, there's been so many injuries this year. There's been so many teams that um, are rolling out backups. And, I mean, it's kind of funny to think, but I honestly think that there's players that are going to win teams championships, fantasy championships, that were not even drafted, unless you're in ridiculously deep leagues. And we're gonna talk about them as we go through. But these are players that weren't even drafted that are gonna make the difference this year, and I really do are going to make the difference. Let's talk about some defenses that I like this week. Great week potentially to stream some defenses, and one of them that I would love to stream is Arizona this week. Arizona is facing San Francisco, and I know it's a divisional game, but San Francisco is yet lost another running back. Mostert is now done. I don't think he should have played last week. So I believe the helm is going to be Jeff Wilson's, but who knows? They also lost Nick Mullins, so you're down two quarterbacks. C.J. Beathard will be the starter this week. It just seems like a prime spot. And Arizona's defense can definitely get at the quarterback. See what Hussein Reddick did 2 weeks ago. Love Buffalo this week. New England's offense, regardless of what happens in this game, and I do think Buffalo wins the game, but New England's offense is horrible. Cam's done, another quarterback that, sorry, it's just not there. Maybe you're okay with being a backup somewhere, or maybe you can get a job as being a backup somewhere, but you're not a starter in the NFL anymore. You're not. Love streaming Washington's defense this week. I think Washington bounces back against Carolina. No CMC this week. Yet again, another blow to fantasy owners who drafted him early. Tampa Bay. But Tampa Bay, this might be the juiciest defensive matchup of the week. One, they're playing Detroit already. Detroit doesn't have a coach. No coach. Detroit fired their coach. Let's recap this. Detroit fired Matt Patricia, put Darrell Bevell in charge as an intern, and for the first time this year, Darrell Bevell can't coach, can't be around the team right now because, well, he apparently came in close contact with somebody who tested positive for COVID-19. You just can't have a good feeling going into this game. Yeah, sure, players want to rally and whatnot, but you're not that good to begin with. You're going to face one of the better defenses in the league with a Tom Brady team that's scratching and clawing and fighting, still trying to win the division. And I think they get a step closer this week. Love Tampa Bay's defense this week. Quarterbacks, I love this week. Well, I love Baker Mayfield for one, because I don't believe the Browns are going to overlook the Jets, especially after watching them beat the Rams. The Browns might need to send a thank you card to Sean McVay because, well, the Browns have a very, very big matchup next week against Pittsburgh. But after watching the Jets come out and actually play against the Rams, I am pretty damn sure that they are not going to be overlooked this week. And I think Baker Mayfield figures out how to exploit that horrendous secondary in the Jets. Something that I thought Jared Goff was going to do. Love Baker Mayfield. And then the guy nobody drafted because nobody expected him to play and may very well win people fantasy championships this year. I'll tell you right now, if you have him and he is on your team and you're in the championship, you're in a good position. It's going to be a good Christmas. It's going to be a good year for you in terms of fantasy football, and that is Jalen Hurts. Going up against Dallas. And Dallas' defense has played better, but they're still a long, long ways away. I expect Jalen Hurts to put up another big week. I'll tell you just how big a little later on. Running backs this week. Okay, yeah, look, you can't go away from your powerhouses. You can't go away from Henry and Cook. Look, you play the guys who got you there. But here's 4 people who probably nobody expected, who I believe are going to pay huge dividends this week. One is Leonard Fournette. Detroit can't stop the run. Rojo's still dealing with that pinky issue. I don't think there's any reason to rush him into this game. They want him healthy for the playoffs. I think Fournette has another big week. And then, talking about teams that can't stop the run, and a team who showed they actually can run the ball last week, Giovanni Bernard. Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying that name. The Cincinnati Bengals facing the Houston Texans. I think Gio Bernard is a very low-end flex starter this week that can potentially give you running back 2 numbers. Maybe if he's able to somehow break off a big one, maybe even high-end running back or low-end running back 1. The tail end of that. David Montgomery. Wow, this guy just sucked at the beginning of the year, but he's been fantasy gold, and I think he continues that this week. And then, providing the starter is still benched, Tony Pollard. I think Tony Pollard this week absolutely dominates Philly's defense. And it's because of what he can do. The fact that he can get outside the tackles a little bit easier. He's got that quick burst, and he can catch the ball in the backfield. Look, running straight up, the gut against the Eagles isn't always the easiest plan or the best way to go. But I think Pollard can really exploit that. I like his matchup this week. So again, we're talking about some people, I'm going to go back to this, that no one drafted that potentially can play huge roles in week 16. Hurts, Giovanni Bernard, Tony Pollard. Now, the wide receivers I like this week, they're a little bit more of a familiar group. One, Davante Adams. Absolutely love Davante Adams this week. Green Bay versus Tennessee is going to be an absolute slobber knocker. I think you're going to see a ton of points in that game. But I love Davante Adams this week. He's due for a bounce back. He was quiet last week. It's just not normal for him. Easy, I could see 2 touchdowns out of him this week. CeeDee Lamb, I think, builds off of last week's game. Again, going against a horrible secondary in Philadelphia. I think CeeDee Lamb is slowly placing, the roots. Gallup is potentially going to miss the game. He's dealing with an injury. And then Allen Robinson for the Chicago Bears. I think absolutely gets it done. And, I hate to say this, but you might be looking at, one of his last 2 games here in a Chicago Bears uniform. We'll see what they do in the offseason. But, and the funny thing about it is the Bears have been the thorn in my side. I made a bold prediction at the very beginning of the season. I said 3 teams were not going to total 10 wins, and that was the New York Jets, check, the Jacksonville Jaguars, check, and the Chicago Bears. Damn it. So somehow, some way, that bold prediction is going to come out to be a push because, well, we're going to get to 10 wins this week. The Bears already have 7, and Jacksonville and the Jets now both have 1. That takes us to 9, and, well, the Bears played the Jaguars this week. So unless there's a tie, which, I would just love that, it looks like we're going to get to those 10 wins. So hopefully it stays at 10. I've said it before, the Bears really surprised me this year. I did not expect them to be this good. And then tight ends. All right, well, it goes without saying, but you just have to. He deserves the recognition. The number 1 tight end I like this week is Travis Kelce. The man is uncoverable right now. He is matchup proof. I don't care who they're playing. You start Travis Kelce. And I think I honestly believe he may be one of the safest starts in all of fantasy football right now. Love Robert Tonyan. He doesn't necessarily put up great numbers, but you're almost guaranteed to get a touchdown from him, and that's phenomenal. Schultz going up against the Eagles. The Eagles can't cover a tight end to save their life. And then, who I think might end up being a top 3 tight end this week, maybe even the best tight end, we're going to go with Fanta Claus. Noah Fant. Love that matchup this week against the Chargers. Darren Waller absolutely brutalized the Chargers. Locke loves throwing to his tight ends. All the pieces are there. That's the reasoning for this. That's why we're going with this pick, not just because, like, hey, I like that. There's a reason. The target shares are there. He's healthy. Hopefully he doesn't get sick again as soon as the game starts, because that would suck. But I love Noah Fant this week. Who am I shying away from this week? Well, I'm shying away from Pittsburgh's defense. Here, I'll break a little bit of the thing. I don't think it's going to be a pretty game again this week for the defense for Pittsburgh. I don't think this is going to be a great week for them. And this may be a surprising one. I am shying away from the LA Rams. The Rams play the Seahawks this week, and I think it is not going to be a defensive game. I think there's going to be scoring in this game. I think the Rams come out because they try and send a message in regards that they don't suck because they let the Jets beat them. Have I mentioned that yet in this show? That the Jets beat the LA Rams? Sean McVay. Talk about a Christmas nightmare. You could have control of this division. Matter of fact, you could be clinching the division this week. Well, you screwed the pooch on that one. But I'm out on the LA Rams this week. Quarterbacks, I'm out on Kirk Cousins. I just don't see that big game from Kirk Cousins this week. I'm not saying he's going to have a bad game, but if you're talking about DFS or you're talking about a fantasy championship, there's just so many quarterbacks I'd rather be rolling with than Kirky Cousins. And unfortunately, in one of my leagues, for my third place game, I'm going to roll with him because it's really the best I have. Another quarterback that I don't like this week, and hear me out, is Josh Allen. And depending who you have, if you're in a debate, I've seen this out there. If it's Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts, hear me out. Start Jalen Hurts. You have Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers. I'm trying to think of teams you can have. Start Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you probably should be starting Aaron Rodgers anyway. Depending who you have, you got to really look at the matchup for Josh Allen. Now, with that being said, I think the Bills win this week. But historically, Bill Belichick finds ways to limit Josh Allen, and Josh Allen struggles against the Patriots. Keep that in mind going into this week. Running backs, I'm just not. Unfortunately, DeAndre Swift, and wow, he looked great last week. Again, kid's going to be a star. But no coach against Tampa Bay's run defense. I'm out on that. I'm out on James Robinson, Jacksonville. Wide receivers I'm out on. Some of them aren't, world shattering. T.Y. Hilton came back down to earth. I think he struggles again this week. DJ Moore, Anderson, really if you need a piece of the Carolina Panthers receiving core this week, I'll tell you right now, Curtis Samuel is the person to own. Washington's secondary is legit, especially their corners. And part of that is because of the pass rush. But Kendall Fuller is a legit corner. Darby has his moments. There's depth there. You saw it last week. They limited Metcalf and Lockett. You have to get into the third, the fourth string wide receivers, and then it's usually, if anything, a deep play or a home run play. So not liking more. And then another player that I'm just out on this week, it's a gut feeling. It's a total gut feeling. So if I'm wrong, you can come back to me and tell me I was wrong. I'm not telling you not to play him, but I think DeAndre Hopkins has a quiet week this week. Why? Because he's going to be facing Rat. He's going to be facing Sherman. And look, the San Francisco 49ers, they have an ability to quiet at least one of your wide receivers. This could be a Christian Kirk week, and we haven't heard a lot from him, but I could see him having a role this week. I could see maybe even Larry Fitzgerald showing his head again. I'm just not super high on D-Hop this week. And then tight ends. Tight ends that I'm out on this week. Evan Ingram. How is Evan Ingram? Wait, can we pause for a second? How is Evan Ingram going to the Pro Bowl? And I'm going to get to the Pro Bowl then. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to get to the Pro Bowl then. And then Dawson Knox. I know he has scored in back-to-back weeks and has put together a string here for the Bills. I just don't see it happening against the Patriots. The only thing that may be beneficial at this point is the Patriots secondary is very, very banged up, but I don't see Knox having that week. This is the week to not be on Knox. So that's where we're at in terms of who I like, don't like. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, we have a better week this week. We've had a very good track record this year. So, as I said in the beginning of the show, I'm really sorry because last week, man, we were just off. Things did not come together like we thought they would. So let's get into bold predictions this week. We've kind of given you some as we've gone through the week, or as we've gone through the show. But one that I'm going to talk about, providing this is my caveat one. I always have one that's got a caveat. If Ezekiel Elliott is benched yet again due to injury, or doesn't play because of injury, Tony Pollard's top 5 running back this week. Absolutely. Tony Pollard, top 5 running back, providing Elliott doesn't play. And then we want to talk about who, rankings and things like that. I'm putting it out there, and it pains me to put it out there because I'm not a fan of the Eagles. But Jalen Hurts is the number 1 quarterback in fantasy this week. 2 weeks in a row, Jalen Hurts, again, number 1 quarterback in fantasy this week. I think you're going to have a couple of games this week that are going to be very, very high scoring, ridiculously high scoring. I think this is one of them. I think the Philly-Dallas game is going to be a back-and-forth game. I think you're going to see ridiculously high scoring in the Tennessee and Green Bay game also. Those are 2 games that it's probably going to be really good to have some, ponies in the race. And then my third one this week. This is my crazy one. This is my crazy bold prediction, the uber bold prediction. DK Metcalf wins round 2 against Jalen Ramsey for 100 yards and a tutty. At least 100 yards and a tutty against Jalen Ramsey this week for DK Metcalf. My game picks this week, well, my lock for the week, I've already kind of alluded to it. Tampa Bay, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Detroit Lions. The Bucs win. They pull closer to that division lead. I think the Colts beat the Steelers this week, making it 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 losses in a row for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Steelers are reeling right now. I think the Colts are really the perfect type of team to give the Steelers problems. Hell, they're having problems against the Bengals. So, I am taking Dallas over the Philadelphia Eagles. And really, honestly, I'm putting this one out there. That's the pick I'm making. It's a coin flip. This game's a coin flip. It can go either way. But I do think Dalton has that team playing. Like I said, I think there's going to be a ton of points scored in that game. And I believe that Dallas just edges it out. I think Dallas strings together a couple wins here at the end of the season. And then the Friday game. We're going to get to that in a second. The Friday game, since there's no Thursday night game, I'm going to take the Minnesota Vikings over the New Orleans Saints. Now, why? Well, because this is what the Vikings do. This is what Kirk Cousins and the Vikings do. They give themselves hope, just enough hope, and then it doesn't follow through with it. So the Vikings, believe it or not, are still in the playoff hunt. And in order for them to stay in the playoff hunt, they need to win. And I think you're just going to add to the drama here. I think somehow the Vikings pull this one out. I don't think it's going to be a dominant one, but I do think the Vikings somehow win this game. So you have another Saints loss, and then you have a Tampa Bay win, and all of a sudden you have a tie for the division lead in the NFC South. So that's my thoughts on that one. What we were talking about, though, just a couple of seconds ago, is we said it's a Friday night game. And I don't know, in all honesty, if this has ever happened before, but it's definitely worth noting. Because of COVID, in my lifetime, 40 plus years, I don't know of any other time. I believe this is the first time ever we are going to have an NFL football game on every night of the week during the season. The only game that was missing, or the only day that was missing, was Friday. Well, we're going to fix that this week. So, of all the things that COVID has screwed us out of in 2020, at least it gave us football on every day of the week. Frankly, I'm okay with that. My wife probably would hate it if we had football every day of the week. But I'm perfectly fine with watching football every single day. To me, well, that's a Christmas miracle. It's time to run out the clock. And I have some interesting topics to talk about. First off, kind of an interesting thing is in the AFC. I talked about this in my social media accounts, and I didn't think it could happen. There was no way this was going to happen. But then watching the Bengals beat the Steelers and the Jets beat the Rams, and I reminded myself that, well, any given Sunday, anything can happen in the NFL. There's actually a way for an 11-5 logjam in the AFC. There is a way that the Pittsburgh Steelers, Pittsburgh Steelers, the Cleveland Browns, the Buffalo Bills, the Indianapolis Colts, the Tennessee Titans, the Miami Dolphins, and the Baltimore Ravens to all finish 11-5. And even in the 2020 crazy COVID year where we expand the playoffs, because at this point KC has locked up the home field and first round bye. They're the 1 seed. I don't see that changing. So even in a crazy year, when you have 7 playoff teams, not 6, you potentially have a team that's 11-5. There's a way for a team that's 11-5 to get left out of the playoffs. And if that would happen, that scenario that played out, sadly, the way it sits right now, using ESPN's playoff predictor, it'd be the Colts. The Colts would be the odd man out, the odd team out. If all those teams went 11-5. It's crazy, isn't it? Speaking of crazy, as we're running out the clock, they announced the Pro Bowl rosters this week. Is there any bigger joke in the NFL than the Pro Bowl and the Pro Bowl rosters? One, they're not even playing the Pro Bowl this year. I don't think they're playing the Pro Bowl. They're going to do some weird virtual COVID-friendly Pro Bowl thing, whatever. But what I don't understand is it's great that you have rookies make the team. That's awesome. But there's things that confuse me about it. So talking about a team member of my team, the Washington football team, Chase Young, rookie, potentially defensive player, or rookie defensive player of the year, was leading the fan vote for all defensive ends. But he's not a starter. He gets named as a backup. Okay. Sure, there's a reason. Evan Ingram of the New York Giants hasn't really done much of anything this year. He's had some decent games, but not world-beating. Yeah, Robert Tonyan, who leads all tight ends in the SEC with touchdowns, he gets snubbed. I just don't understand what their criteria is. There's players that actually deserve to be on there that get left off every year. And it's just baffling to me. Baffling. As to how some players get in, some don't. How some people get in there just strictly on name recognition. Baffling. And talking about baffling things. Let's talk about NFL players acting a fool. Let's start with Michael Thomas of the New Orleans Saints. I think it's funny that you had an ankle injury that you had no problem playing through until Drew Brees came back. We live in a world where it's like you can't have a difference of opinion with somebody, and God forbid you have a difference of opinion with somebody. But Drew Brees, despite whatever his opinions may be, has got to be one of the most upstanding, nicest people ever met. But he's allowed to have his opinions. There's reports out there that, or speculation, not reports, speculation that part of this sudden IR stint for Michael Thomas is because he didn't want to play with Drew Brees. I don't know. Michael Thomas, you've had a shitty year, to be honest. You got in a fight in practice. Like, I don't see how you go from being looked to be one of the highest caliber wide receivers, an elite wide receiver in the NFL, to really just kind of being a punk. I don't know what's going on there, but I sure don't like it. I hope he bounces back because, well, that's just a hell of a lot of wasted talent. Now let's talk about talent. Wasting it. Juju Smith-Schuster, of those current 3-game skid Pittsburgh Steelers, you're a professional athlete. Your job is to play a game, but let's worry about our TikTok account. Start doing this thing where he would dance on the logo of the opposing team's field for his TikTok. Well, he did that against the Bengals. The Steelers lost, and in the best dish served cold karma or irony, no pun intended, literally popped Juju in the mouth when he got lit the up during the game. Afterwards, he said, well, he's not going to dance on the team's logos anymore. Well, good call. Good call that you're not going to dance on the team's logos anymore. But here's an idea. How about you come and play the game? Sorry, players like this drive me nuts. We've talked about it before. Like, you have an opportunity to play a game that I love, a game that I would probably play for free. This is your job. It's your career. And you take it so lightly. How about players like him, Josh Jacobs, who we talked about last week, instead of being on your damn phone before the game, instead of worrying about your social media account, your presence, and all this crap, how about you actually get your head in the right space and you prepare for a game. And then you go out and you play the game to the best of your ability. Where are those players? Those are the players that I want on my team. Oh, and talking about those players and players on my team, let's talk about Dwayne Haskins. Dwayne. Current starting quarterback for the Washington football team because of injury. The crazy thing about it is I know you're really young, and I know that's not an excuse. I know you have a lot of experience. But even the words out of your mouth, this might be your last chance. You're on a team that's still not a great team. You're a gritty team. You have a hinting on a great defense. You need to be a little bit more consistent for me to say great. But you're a pretty damn good defense. You have some offensive playmakers, and you're winning some games. And currently you are in the lead in your division. A very bad division at the moment. But still, nevertheless, you're in the lead for your division. You have a whole team that's fighting for a playoff spot. That's the point. You come to play the season because you want to go to the playoffs. And once you get to the playoffs, hell, anything can happen. Shit, it's 2020. It could be a Washington football team versus the Cleveland Browns in the Super Bowl. How 2020 does it get than that? So what do you do after the game? Where in your little mind, and I know you've apologized. Great, thanks. Thanks for your apology. But where in your little mind do you think, oh, it's a smart idea in a year where games have had to be rescheduled, players have missed multiple games because of COVID, that you decide to go to a private party that has more people than permitted, with strippers at it, oh, and not wear a mask? Hello? Is there anyone upstairs? I'm glad they stripped the captain seal off your jersey. You don't deserve it. They should have fined you more. And in all honesty, if Alex Smith was fully healthy, it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if they would have just cut you straight out. So you should be kissing Ron Rivera's butt right now that you even have another chance with this team. Newsflash, you need to do some serious soul searching, some serious self-evaluation. When Ryan Leaf, who may be the all-time biggest screw-up as a high-profile draft pick in the NFL, comes out and says, it's like I'm looking in the mirror. If that's not a wake-up call for you, Mr. Haskins, whew, I don't know what is. It sucks that my team that I root for wasted a first-round pick on you, because that's how I feel right now. So get your crap together or get out. Because there is a culture change in Washington, and I sure don't want you to be there poisoning it. For our final kneel down. So much negativity. The final kneel down. It's Christmas Eve. This year's been a bitch. 2020 has sucked. Unfortunately, it's still sucking. So from the First and 10 Club, may I wish to all my viewers, their friends, and their family health and wellness. I hope you find reasons to smile, and I hope you find them easily. For those who are still competing in their fantasy leagues, good luck. I hope Santa brings you a fantasy championship. And I hope that this year we all find a way during the holidays to just be a little bit more tolerant to each other. Understand people can have difference of opinions and have conversations. COVID took away a lot of social interaction. The one thing it taught me was I like to debate. I like hearing what other people have to say. I don't have to agree with it, but it doesn't mean they're wrong. So, for the First and 10 Club, I'm Mark D. As always, if you haven't done so, subscribe, follow us, share, spread the word. But most of all, Merry Christmas. Have a great holiday, everyone. See you next week for our New Year's special. Let's go football.